On this episode of RDH Coast to Coast, Tina and Kim invite Andrea.edelen, a dental hygiene director for Mortenson Dental Partners, and Misty Mattingly, the vice president and chief dental hygiene officer for Sage Dental. Both of these hygienists have created an impact in the DSO world. They came on and shared their experiences working in a DSO and why we should really stop thinking of working for one as a really negative experience. We truly enjoyed this conversation, and we think you will too. So grab your headphones and listen in to this special edition of RDH Coast to Coast. Hello, Kim. I am so excited because we have some people joining us today. How are you, though, before we get everybody joining in?
Good. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, Kim, this is started off as your kind of dream idea of having some hygienists that work in our DSO world. So I'm going to hand it over to you to help us with introducing some of our guests today, if you're okay with that. If not, I am throwing you over there. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I really wanted to shed some light on the DSO world because I feel that there is still, some negativity that might come along with it. Even working in education, I will occasionally hear faculty say, you never want to work, for a DSO. And I don't think that's further from the truth. I think that there are pros and cons to any type of dental office, and I'm so excited to have our guests here with us today who both represent the DSO space, and we can just kind of get more into it and what they offer and what their benefits are and how, it's really the way the dental world is going.
Absolutely. So if just so that everybody knows who you are. So Andrea, can you just tell us your first and last name and the organization that you work with?
Sure. I'm Andrea.edelen and I work with Mortenson Dental Partners.
Awesome. And Misty, same for you.
I'm Misty Mattingly and I work with Sage Dental.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for being here. And like Kim said, I've been in education for a long time and, a dentistry for arthritic finger amount of time that, it's kind of interesting the way it has evolved. It used to be, that's where you go if you want to burn out quickly or if you can't find another job. But from my perception too, it seems like it's changed. So for you guys, how long have you been in the DSO world? Misty, go ahead and go first.
I've been in the DSO world for 15 years.
Okay.
And been a hygienist for 19 years.
Wow.
And then, I guess in dentistry, 25 years.
Which is crazy, Misty, when you're only 25 years old.
I know. I just celebrated actually my 22nd birthday yesterday.
Yes.
It's fun. It's a good, you have your family confused when every single family member on my, actually was like, my mom was like, oh, it's this. Madison was like, oh, happy 30th. And then my other son was like, happy 21st. My husband was like, happy 29th. So, it was like
a good range.
I joke sometimes when I talk to people about how long I've been a hygienist. I'm like, I was like 12 when I graduated. Yeah, so,
exactly. Exactly. We all are.
Yeah.
We all were.
Yeah.
So Andrea, how long have you been in the DSO life?
So I've been in DSO life for 16 years. So very similar to Misty. And I practiced in private practice full-time clinically for 10 years prior to that. And so, Kim, I really appreciate what you said because one, it has changed a lot, the perception, but I still don't think that we are where we need to be. But one thing that's great that I think it sounds like Misty and I both have is that I have the perspective of both. And there are, pros and cons to both. And everyone has their specific needs, desires, and wants. And I think that's really the way people should take it instead of just no to DSO or no to private practice or no to public health for that matter.
Right. Well, what would you say are some of the like your top one or two pros that you have found with being in the DSO life?
Wow. Oh, gosh, it would be hard to really narrow it down. I could talk about this a long time as Miss
right.
as Misty knows. Clinically, we have standards, not to say that other practices don't, but for instance, we have standardized operatories, instruments. We have, Hufredi Everedge in all of our practices. And I really think, and there's a lot of reasons, right, that we could get into for that. But I do hear a lot when I'm out talking to hygienists. I talk to hygienists anywhere and everywhere that I can, and some in private practice, some in DSO, and some of the equipment standards that other practices, I don't want to say non-DSOs, but I hear a lot about, I don't have instruments, I don't have a Cavitron, I'm sharing this and I'm sharing that. And so that's something I'm really proud of, that I think is probably true of most DSOs. Of course, I've been in the same DSO, but I have so many contacts through other DSOs. And that's one thing I feel like kind of sets us apart. And of course, part of that's probably that we get really great pricing on equipment. When you have the size, we just did a big bulk buy on hand pieces. Everybody has, Freedom hand pieces. That's a huge pro, I would say, to the DSO space. Learning, we have a learning management system. We don't step on clinical autonomy toes. I don't mean that to say that when I say standardization, because it kind of scares people, but we are able to kind of standardize some things and deliver information differently than, not in a DSO, I would say.
Yeah. Misty, how about for you? What have you found within your DSO life that you can add to what Andrea has already said?
Well, I think she pointed out two major ones that we see big difference, right? The equipment and clinical support. Clinical support was one, and education. I think the one thing that you're going to find in technology, right? You're going to find that in the DSOs because, Andrea's right. We do have, the ability to buy bulk. We have the ability to be able to really put it in a bigger scope, kind of like school, honestly, right? Like school has the ability to be able to, to do that, and standardization, very textbook. I think it's very easy for somebody coming out of hygiene school into the DSO because we really are very textbook, and we need to be, because we can't really make those discrepancies because we have a bigger eye on us. Yeah. Right. So, if it says this is how you're supposed to treat it, we're going to be really consistent, and we don't, step on our doctors, and our doctors still have the autonomy to do it, but they have the clinical support and the knowledge that, when the AAP guidelines changed, we all went about and educated them on it. In a private practice, you may or not have got that training, right? And versus in the DSO model, we instantly, if, those standards get updated, we're updating that too. And, I have the opportunity to do acquisitions, and sometimes I have some private practices that I run into that, they're not following the standards of care, and it's just that they don't know, because, we have a compliance person. We have, somebody who handles learning and development. We have somebody who goes in and checks the equipment and makes sure it runs. It's just a much more well-oiled machine than a private practice when they're, having to do it all by themselves. It has to be extremely hard for them. And I think that's why we're seeing the growth in DSOs across the board. Even private practices are now selling out to more DSO models. And I think the reason why they're doing it is that they know that it's hard to do it on their own, and it's really expensive. And to have that leadership and that support there is tremendous. So, and I wanted to also point out what Kim said about teachers. I'm a part of a DSO group, and Andrea, I think you were too. I want to say you went to this DSO event and I want to say that maybe where I met you.
That's where we met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we talked about this as leaders. So I have to also tell Andrea, thank you for, doing this. And thank you to RDH, to Tina, and to Kim, because we as leaders know that DSOs are often this shine, especially amongst educators, right? And we talked about this at this meeting, remember, Andrea?
We did.
And that we had to do something to be able to do this. And us as DSO leaders actually have an upcoming meeting that we're going to be having to discuss what we can do better to improve educators, because educators really give us a bad name. And we hear that often. And so it's been a big thing for DSO leaders around the country. The group of us that all are kind of trying to really change that, because there's so many great benefits.
So
Andrea and I just said
I'm going to ask a question, because you said that, you're trying to change that narrative. What do you think is, because it did have this kind of like you're going to work yourself to the nubbins kind of a thought process. And I'm not saying that all DSOs are created equally. I think that there might be, just like with private practice, any type of practice model you look at, there's going to be the good, the bad, the ugly, the amazing, all of that. So what is it that you think that is different or is changing from what was the old thought process? I guess let me rephrase that. What was the old thought process that made us think that it was like, this is bad, this is ugly, that's not so much now?
I honestly and truly think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I guess that it wasn't privately owned anymore, that it became corporate ran, and people kind of I hate that word corporate. Oh, it's a corporate place, right? Which I guess for some people justifies that maybe it loses that, the camaraderie or the family piece that you would have in maybe a private practice, right? And that it became more about making money than maybe taking care of the patients, which honestly and truly, it's always about taking care of the patients, because we all know that if we don't take care of the patients first, everything else happens, because it's what we do. It's customer service. So if you don't take care of people, it's going to be negative. It's not going to be a profitable, business.
I also think, and this really aligns with what Misty is sharing, is that, and this is not my own experience. I hear this from a lot of hygienists, but when I was in private practice, we did not talk about metrics at all. It was almost like a dirty word, right? And DSOs, we do talk about metrics. Now we really talk, again, Misty, we've talked about this as well. Like, we really talk about how the metrics are connected to patient care, but I think that gets lost for people that aren't necessarily in it. And just like any industry in any field, a lot of educators are, just like hygienists, right? A lot of us are, you're in your lane, and educators are in their lane. And so if they don't hear the good, they're only hearing, from some certain people, or they might have heard a negative comment years ago. And, we all have what we have to go on, right? And so I think for a long time, a lot of schools didn't let us in as DSOs, not even in to speak to the students, which was another, a miss, really, right? And I still deal with that, Misty. I don't know if you do. It's interesting how in some areas they're very friendly to not just DSOs, but to let people in to talk to their students, which I have found that the students really want that. And I feel like they deserve to hear everything, right? They need to hear from a DSO. They need to hear from private practice, and community and government, all the different aspects. They need to hear that. But we still have schools that won't even let us in. So that already gives a negative impression of DSOs, in my opinion. It's like, well, we won't even let them come talk to you. Well, that's intimidating. Yeah.
And one thing, so I talk to a lot of schools as, being in the new grad space, and sometimes I'm asked, can you touch upon the DSO? And I almost think that they think I'm going to touch upon it negatively, but I fully embrace the DSO space. And I say, you can have a fantastic DSO employer. You can have a fantastic private practice, or you can have a really bad one of either. You really don't know until you get in there. And one other really positive aspect that I wanted to share too is the room for growth within a larger organization. So we all, hear the word burnout, and a hygienist is getting burned out and they don't know what else to do and they just want to quit. But if you work for a larger organization, you have the opportunity to, go into a different management or, education within the company. There's more doors that might open when you work for a larger organization.
Right. And one of the other things I want to really bring out that I think is really key about being a part of a DSO is that everybody's on the same level, right? We don't have this, of course, like we are doctors, right? But everybody, like I always say, everybody puts their pants leg on the same way, right? And, sometimes And, if there's something that is not being done right, like they have other people they can go to. But in a private practice, which I see this happen a lot with hygienists too, is they go to a practice and they feel like something is wrong or unethical or something like that. And they can't say anything about it because that guy cuts their check or that dentist cuts their check. Right. And it puts them in a very uncomfortable situation. I'm sure you guys teaching have heard this because I personally have been reached out about, hey, I've just got this from new grads. And they're taught one way in school. And when they get out, now they're being told this is the way they're supposed to do it because that's the way we do it at our practice. And they're completely confused. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to do. Versus in a DSO world, they have,
there's
me,
a
myself,
true HR, right?
Yeah,
everybody's an employee. There you have an HR director that you can go and talk to.
Correct. And you also have somebody for clinical support. So if you go into a practice and you're a new grad, right, and you're not comfortable with, I don't know, anything like either a product or an instrumentation technique, or you have new instruments and you're not sure how to use them, we have all the, abilities to be able to provide that support and send somebody in to work with you and help guide you. And, we don't just throw you in first day either, right? Like you come out, like we gradually work you into a schedule and help new grads transition from school life to real life, because we know there's a big difference.
There's a huge difference. And that's another thing I always like to touch on too, is in a larger organization, you are able to have more of an onboarding opportunity and a mentoring opportunity than you might have if you're just put in your operatory by yourself with hygienists that we know how it is. You sometimes feel like you never leave your room for the day, let alone help a new grad that's in the room next to you. So I think, Andrea, you mentioned that you guys have some new grad programs that you do too for your new hires.
Yes. And, Misty really kind of hit on it too, when you think about a network. Right. And I know, this is kind of showing how long I've been in dentistry, but I mean, I remember the days where we didn't have access to, YouTube and things like that. Not like we do now. But even with that, in a DSO, you really have a network, even if it's not because you're like, I need support here or someone's doing something wrong, but just being a new grad, you have all of this to learn still. Right. And we have a network and we do a lot with new grads. And honestly, full transparency, we had to get better at it. Mm-hmm. We had to listen. And, and that's one thing about a DSO too. We do surveys. We have some surveys called Your Voice Survey. And even with some of the programs that we've had over the years, we were still hearing, like, I still feel thrown in. And this isn't just for hygiene. This is sometimes on the assistant side too. We started seeing that we weren't doing as much with onboarding that we should, because truly at the practice level, people still think, oh, they're a hygienist and they have their license, they're good to go. No. So, I mean, we really put a lot more structure behind it on that, to Misty's point, not just throwing you in your first day with full schedule of patients and you don't even know where to put your purse yet. No. So we, am I lying? Right.
Yeah, that's a true story. I remember one time temping at a job right out of, and I go in and I literally was like holding my purse almost all day.
Yeah.
Like right in the base of my chair.
It's crazy. It's like, show me where the bathroom is before you show me the laboratory, right? And so, we've really been more intentional about that the last few years, with the structure of like a certain amount of time shadowing, pairing them with a mentor. We also have done something in the last couple of years that probably wouldn't work everywhere because it's kind of location specific, but we are doing a scholars program where in their last year of dental hygiene school, they can apply for it. And so they're already connected with us. Mm-hmm. So, imagine because, that last year of school is super hard, but you're really with your peers that are learning alongside you. And so, having, and your instructors, of course, right. But, having just that connection with, practicing hygienists that are like in the trenches every day as a resource. Now, we couldn't help them with their boards probably because we haven't done that for a while, right? That there's a lot of resources there for, students, but just trying to do anything and everything that we can to prepare them for the real world. And then also to just not throwing them in, helping them feel supported.
That's awesome. So I'm going to say one of the things that I think that I'm seeing after listening to you guys or hearing is that one of the reasons why we are seeing such a positive shift in the DSO world is because of hygienists like you two who have been able to grow and develop in your career and have seen what needs to be changed and put the effort into making it change. And so that's, and the organizations that maybe haven't done that are the ones that are still struggling, but it's hygienists like you guys that are willing to go in and see the need and create that change.
Yeah, Tina, that makes me want to cry, because honestly and truly, what I always wanted to do was create a space and a place where I wanted to work. And so that drives me every day to create this space and environment for hygienists that want to be there, that they really do. And I'm so lucky because, you know, I have a really high retention rate. I mean, it's like 90%.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have hygienists that are wanting to come to work here, and it's like everything I always dreamt of, because I wanted to create this great space where they felt loved, supported, and cared for. And that's exactly what, you know, I've been able to do. And I think that exactly, it's not just me now. I think all of the DSOs are really going like, what does it do for us to get hygienists, retain them, and keep them? Because they're a significant part of our business. And for so long, the hygienists have always kind of been like, oh, let's go sit Susie in the corner, right? She's the hygienist. And, you know, I think that DSOs have really learned the value that hygiene brings to a practice. And they're very welcoming and really want to grow hygienists. And this is what Kim was talking about. There are great opportunities for hygienists too. We know that, you know, hygienists on average stay in this profession about 8 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to say, and I hate that, because I feel like we should be in it longer, right? I've been in it, but on average, a lot of them, we deal with a lot of burnout. And so I've wanted to create a space where they didn't feel that burnout. And then also that there was room for growth, because I think that's the one thing that they don't have in a private practice. And we really have the ability to do that. And it can be in compliance, it could be in HR and recruiting, or it could be in like training and development. You know, you could still do clinical and be a mentor. That's kind of what Andrea was saying in her program, where she probably has a mentor that's in the region that helps mentor those individuals. And we've just created this space for hygienists to be supported and loved, and the ability for them to also grow. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they grow out of the chair, right? Like some people, but there's also things in which that they can do. Like some of my team, we did a FDA trial, and some of my mentors. And so they were a part of that, which is something that they would never get in any other environment.
Right.
That, you know, and so it was so cool to see that. And we're in the process of getting a white paper written about our FDA trial. And so they'll get to be published as well. And so that's a really cool thing that I'm super excited to get to do for them. And, you know, I think that, you know, you're backed by a hygienist. You know, Tina, you hear me say this, for a hygienist, by a hygienist. You're also like backed by a hygienist, right? Like Andrea and I both help run and, you know, hygiene departments and larger DSOs. And, you know, you're backed by a hygienist. We get it. We've been there. We've done it. You know,
awesome.
I'm not somebody who's telling you to do something that I never did and or won't get in there and do it with you. And so I think that's the type of leadership you see in DSOs.
Right. Yeah, we only have a few minutes left with our time together. And so I, Kim, if you don't mind, I do have one more question before we throw out the fun question. So the other thing that I thought was interesting, and Andrea, you kind of said this earlier, is the location and having several locations. And so you're with, I want to make sure I say Mortenson Dental Partners.
Yeah.
So where in the country are you located?
Yes. So we are actually in 9 states.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could list them all, but we're easy to find. You search out Mortenson Dental Partners. I know you're going to, you know, share our information, but I love our story. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I just love to share. that Mortenson Dental Partners was started by Dr. Wayne Mortenson, who was a private practice dentist. He started the company in 1979, and he went back to dental school with a family. He was a farmer. Like, it's a true, just American story. And he started out just networking and talking to like-minded dentists, and to think about the growth. We now have, over 140 practices in 9 states. And he started in 1979. And Misty, when you said take care of the patients and everything else will follow, that is what Dr. Wayne said from day one, when he had one practice and one hygienist, and his wife worked the front desk, his wife, Sue. So it's just truly amazing, story. And so, but yeah, we're in 9 states, which is fun. As Misty knows, it's always fun to kind of manage all of those different state regs, because we don't all have the same regulations, which is another topic of podcast, and we can come back and talk about that.
Yeah, well, yeah,
absolutely.
And Misty, I want you to say where you're at, but I think that is the other thing, is like with the DSO lifestyle, it might be easier to be a little more mobile, moving from state to state, if you already have that connection, right?
We just had someone relocate from Utah to Indiana. We actually just had, and they could do that anyway, right? But they came to a practice that has, the same mission, values, might have a different brand on it, the software that they're used to, their tenure, their ESOP that they have. And so we have that relocation all the time, which is great, because people have lives, and sometimes they relocate to go back to family, but sometimes they just want to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Misty, so you're with Sage Dental?
I'm with Sage Dental. We're currently in Florida, Georgia. We're about to open up in South Carolina, Alabama, and Tennessee.
Wow.
So doing that coming up here soon. But I wanted to also just reiterate, Andrea, exactly, like, I like Mortensons. You guys are great. I will say that's one of the DSOs that I'm always like, yes, that's it. They're doing a great job, and I'm very proud of your leadership there. But I just really think that, like, I lost my train of thought, guys. You're gonna have to edit that.
That's okay.
I know what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Andrea, what's so cool about it is everybody thinks that, like, DSO, but it's really a private practice that started, right? And
it's a group.
It became a DSO.
Growing. Yeah.
And everybody thinks DSO. So this is a private practice doctor who realized that he wanted to develop. Same thing with Sage. I mean, we were started off by one guy too, right? Mm-hmm. But nobody thinks about, they just think corporate, and it's not like, it's really people behind here that are really creating the systems and the processes and wanting something. Like, I'm sure Dr. Mortenson wanted to have something that he could be proud of and help patients out, because when you think of dental people in general, right, we really have a kind heart, and we really just want to impact the world and help other with their smiles. And I just think it's a great story. And like I said, with Sage, we're very similar. It's the same thing. We started in 1993, and we're going to keep growing, because we want to create this space for providers to come and feel, heard, wanted, cared for, right? And create this beautiful space for them. Because our job at our level is to take care of them. And then if we take care of them, they'll take care of our patients.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, Kim. So I think we made the decision a couple weeks ago that we were going to ask everybody who was on our podcast. Do you remember the question, or should I do it? I don't.
Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So Kim and I had a conversation a couple of podcasts ago, that still to be aired at the time of this recording, but where we were discussing proper oral hygiene etiquette in public. Like, when is it okay to bring out the floss? What are your thoughts? Is flossing, traditional string flossing, in public? Is it tooth picking? Is it nothing in public? So in just like a couple of sentences or less, Misty, you go first. What is your thoughts on proper oral hygiene etiquette in public?
I'm going to say toothpicks. I'm from the South, so we're very modest. So I couldn't foresee you like flossing your teeth with traditional floss. And then 2, I'm just thinking, now your hands stink. So going to have to go wash your hands. So I'm going to have to go like just a toothpick because we have those at the restaurants. You can get it, get what you got to get and move on and be discreet about it too.
Yeah.
Don't like getting spit or nothing.
What about for you, Andrea? Where's your quota land?
If I see someone flossing in public, I think, are you a hygienist? But then I'm like, no, hygienists, we don't floss in public. We might floss at dental things, but no, we don't floss it in public because we get it, right? We see our glasses and our face shields.
Yeah.
No what's dropping out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued to find out what if that's the question for everybody going forward, what the topic is.
So tune in.
Yeah, that was it. So you'll have to listen to the episode where Kim and I discuss our theories on public oral hygiene and the reason why that question came about. But it is definitely, I will say that Kim has tighter standards than I do.
Beware if you're going out for dinner with Tina.
Okay, you're gonna be.
Well, she's from out west, West East.
We're a little more progressive over here on the West Coast.
You are. True story.
Well, this was so great. I'm so glad you both were able to join us. It was just a great conversation, and I really hope our listeners enjoyed as much as we did.
Yes.
Well, and we're happy to come back anytime. I love Andrea. It's so good to see you too.
You too. You
so
too.
good to see you, Kim. And
Thank
Tina
you guys.
Well. Yes.
And
Bye.
Kim and Tina saying goodbye.
Great. Nice to see you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, you guys.
Thank you to our sponsor, Dental Post, the nation's largest dental job board. Be sure to check them out for different types of employment resources. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. And make sure you follow Tina and Kim on all the different social medias to learn other tips and tricks related to dentistry. Until next time, have a great day.